Thank you.
176, yes. Well,
Inés,
yes,
our next book, material book,
Yes.
Next book.
yes, I told you to buy the book in advance because there were some low prices. I don't remember. I told you in.
I will call my librarian
Yes.
and I will ask for two or for more, whatever they want.
Yes, if you can for me, yes, Malena, I told
Yes.
you yes.
Yes, because
Thank you.
I told you that I saw good prices and very high prices in Mercado Libre. So one has to look for a cheap copy.
Mm.
Yes. You remember the name, Malena, no? Grapes of Wrath.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Unforgettable. Unforgettable.
Unforgettable. Okay. So he was asking here, 176. Didn't see much of the war, did I? Still, I guess I didn't miss much. No, but you've seen enough of the army. That's true. I guess I wouldn't mind if the war if it wasn't for the army. This is so funny. I guess I wouldn't mind the war if it wasn't for the army.
Mm.
They'll be they'll be sending you home soon, won't they? Guess so. Where are you from? New York. I'm from Cranston, Wisconsin. Do you know that country? It's a great country for lakes. You can canoe for days and days without a portage. We have a camp on Big Loon Lake. We used to have some wonderful times there, lived like wild men. I went for a trip for 3 weeks once without seeing a house. Ever done much canoeing? Not so much as I'd like to. That's the thing to make you feel fit. First thing you do when you shake out of your blankets is jump in and have a swim. It's great to swim when the morning mist is still on. The water and the sun just strikes the tops of the birch trees. Ever smelled bacon cooking? I mean, out in the woods, in a frying pan over some sticks of pine and beech wood. Some great old smell, isn't it? And after you've paddled all day and feel tired and sunburned right to the palms of your feet, to sit around the fire with some trout roasting in the ashes and hear the sizzling the bacon makes in the pan. Oh boy. So this poor man who has lost his legs remembers his canoeing and and swimming, and now he won't be able to do it. No, so this is very, very nostalgic and very
Yes.
striking. No,
He was in a good shape. He liked sports. He enjoyed the nature.
yes,
And then the war.
and finished everything. Yes.
Mhm.
So, God, I'd like to have wrung that damn little Parson's neck. So Andrew suddenly comes up with this idea of killing the priest, no? Would you? The legless man turned brown eyes on Andrews with a smile. I guess he's about as much to blame as anybody is. Guys like him, I guess they have that kind in Germany too. So this is true. Yes, they are as responsible as the officers. And it is the same in America or in Germany, no? Then, well, there is a question here about democracy. You don't think we made the world quite as safe for democracy as it might be, said Andrews in a low voice. Hell, how should I know? I bet you never drove a nice wagon. I did, all one summer down home. It was some life. Get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and carry 100 or 200 pounds of ice into everybody's icebox. That was the life to make a fellow feel fit. So the question with this man is that he wanted to feel fit. And he repeats the same idea. Yes, he goes on talking about the drinking martini cocktails, swim in the lake. And that was the life to make a fellow feel fit. So now imagine, no, the way he feels now. And he remembers a friend of his What's he doing now? Asked Andrews. He died on the transport coming across here. Died of the flu. Remember, we already mentioned, no?
The,
The
the,
flu.
the
Yes.
Spanish flu.
La gripe española.
La gripe española. They were silent. The fire roared in the stove. No one was talking. The men lolled in chairs somnolently. Now and then someone spat. Outside of the window, Andrews could see the soft white dancing of the snowflakes. His limbs felt very heavy. His mind was permeated with dusty stagnation, like the stagnation of old garrets and lumber rooms, where among superannuated bits of machinery and cracked, grimy crockery lie heaps of broken toys. So this is what they are. They are broken toys. Yes, that some people used to enjoy themselves. Yes, and they are broken. John,
Not even considered as humans being.
no, simply as puppets that the officers moved and they are broken now.
Mm-hmm.
John Andrews sat on a bench in a square full of linden trees with a pale winter sunshine full of his face and hands. He had been looking up through his eyelashes at the sun that was the color of honey, and he let his dazzled glance sink slowly through the black lacework of twigs, down the green trunks of the trees to the bench opposite where sat two nursemaids, and between them a tiny girl with a face daintily colored and lifeless like a doll's face, and a frilled dress under which showed small ivory knees and legs encased in white stocks and yellow sandals. So he's there kind of dozing, yes, and looking at the girl in front of him. And what happens to him? The thought came to him suddenly that months had gone by. Was it only months? Since his hands had touched anything soft, since he had seen any flowers. The last was a flower an old woman had given him in a village in the Argonne. You remember the episode when all the soldiers were drinking and he was in front in a house, at the door of a house, talking to an old woman. Yes, and that woman gave him a kiss and a flower. An orange marigold, and he remembered how soft the old woman's withered lips had been against his cheek when she had leaned over and kissed him. His mind suddenly lit up as with a strain of music, with a sense of sweetness of quiet lives worn away monotonously in the fields, in the grey little provincial towns, in old kitchens full of fragrance of herbs and tang of smoke from the hearth, where there are pots on the windowsill full of basil in flower. Something made him go up to the little girl and take her hand. So he wanted to touch something soft. The child, looking up suddenly and seeing a lanky soldier with a pale, lean face and light, straw-colored hair escaping from under a cap too small for him, shrieked and let go the string of the balloon. So the girl was afraid and she lost her balloon, which soared slowly into the air, trembling a little in the faint, cool wind that blew. The child wailed dismally. So he produced chaos because the girl started shouting. And Andrews, quailing under the furious glances of the nursemaids, stood before her, flushed crimson, stammering apologies, not knowing what to do. The white caps of the nursemaids bent over and ribbons fluttered about the child's head as they tried to console her. Andrews walked away dejectedly, now and then looking up at the balloon, which soared a black speck against the gray and topaz-colored clouds. C'est l'Américaine, he heard one nursemaid exclaim to the other. So the nurses insult him, yes, because they called him dirty. But this was the first hour in months he had had free, the first moment of solitude. He must live. Soon he would be sent back to his division. A wave of desire for furious fleshly enjoyments went through him, making him want steaming dishes of food drenched in rich, spice-flavored sauces, making him want to get drunk on strong wine, to roll on thick carpets in the arms of naked, libidinous women. He was walking down the quiet gray street of the provincial town with its low houses with red chimney pots and blue slate roofs and its irregular yellowish cobbles. A clock somewhere was striking 4 with deep, booming strokes. Andrews laughed. He had to be in hospital at 6. Already he was tired. So he starts feeling a desire for good things, for good food, for, good drink.
For
women,
pleasure,
For
pleasure.
pleasure. He wants to feel pleasure, yes? The window of a pastry shop appeared invitingly before him, denuded as it was by wartime. A sign in English said, tea. Walking in, he sat down in a fussy little parlor where the tables had red cloths and a print in pinkish and greenish colors hung in the middle of the imitation brocade paper of each wall. Under a print of a poster bed with curtains in front of which 18 to 20 people bowed, with the title of Secret d'Amour, sat 3 young officers who cast cold, irritated glances at this private with a hospital badge on who invaded their tea shop. Andrew stared back at them, flaming with dull anger. He was not well received because he was a common soldier. Sipping the hot, fragrant tea, he sat with a blank sheet of music paper before him, listening in spite of himself to what the officers were saying. They were talking about Ronsard. It was with irritated surprise that Andrews heard the name. What right had they to be talking about Ronsard? He knew more about Ronsard than they did, because, this was a poet. I sent you the explanation. And he felt that it was unfair that he who knew about this poetry had to hear what the officers were saying, no? He was as sensitive, as humane, as intelligent, as well-read as they were. What right had they to the cold, suspicious glance with which they had put him in his place when he had come into the room? Yet that had probably been as unconscious, as unavoidable as was his own biting envy. The thought that if one of those men should come over to him, he would have to stand up and salute and answer humbly, not from civility, but from the fear of being punished, was bitter as wormwood. Filled him with a childish desire to prove his worth to them, as when older boys had ill-treated him at school and he had prayed to have the house burned down so that he might heroically save them all. There was a piano in an inner room where in the dark the chairs upside down perched dismally on the tabletops. He almost obeyed an impulse to go in there and start playing. By the brilliance of his playing to force these men, who thought of him as a coarse automaton, something between a man and a dog, to recognize him as an equal, a superior. But the war's over. I want to start living. Red wine, streets of the Nightingale cries to the rose, said one of the officers. What do you say we go AWO to Paris? Dangerous. Well, what can they do? We are not enlisted men. They can only send us home. That's just what I want. I'll tell you what, we'll go to the Cochon Bleu and have a cocktail and think about it. The lion and the lizard keep their courts where, what the devil was his name anyway, will glory and drinks deep, while Major Peabody keeps his court in Dijon to his heart's content. Major Peabody is a general name they gave to the military police. No? So he's planning to escape. Spurs, sorry, I thought you said something. No.
So they are going to have a meeting with food and
No, this is
Is-
what he wants. This is what he wants.
but
Eh,
it's
no,
not
no,
invited anywhere.
no.
Mm.
The officers, they are there, and he is, well, thinking and hearing, no? Spurs jingled as the three officers went out. A fierce disgust took possession of John Andrews. He was ashamed of his spiteful irritation. If, when he had been playing the piano to a room full of friends in New York, a man dressed as a laborer had shambled in, wouldn't he have felt a moment of involuntary scorn? It was inevitable that the fortunate should hate the unfortunate because they fear them. So his feeling of, he felt that the officers looked down on him because he was a simple soldier, they thought. But now he understands. He said, well, it was inevitable. He would have felt the same if when he was with his friends in New York playing the piano, a poor person appeared. No? So he said it was inevitable that the fortunate should hate the unfortunate because they feared them. No? And well, this is again Dos Passos with his. But he was so tired of all those thoughts, drinking down the last of his tea at a gulp, he went into the shop to ask the old woman with little black whiskers over her bloodless lips, who sat behind the white desk at the end of the counter, if she minded his playing the piano. In the deserted tea room among the dismal upturned chairs, his crescent fingers moved stiffly over the keys, because now his fingers are hard. Now they are stiff. He cannot move them. He forgot everything else. Locked doors in his mind were swinging wide, revealing forgotten, sumptuous halls of his imagination. The Queen of Sheba, grotesque as a satyr, white and flaming with whirls of desire, as the great implacable Aphrodite stood with her hand on his shoulder, sending shivers of warm sweetness rippling through his body, while her voice intoned in his ears all the inexhaustible voluptuousness of life. An asthmatic clock struck somewhere in the obscurity of the room. 7, John Andrews paid, said goodbye to the old woman with the mustache, and hurried out in the street, like Cinderella at the ball. So he had to go back like Cinderella, no? Why go back? A voice kept saying inside him. Anything is better than that. Better throw himself in the river even than go back. He could see the olive drab clothes in a heap among the dry bulrushes on the river bank. He thought of himself crashing naked through the film of ice into water black as Chinese lacquer. And when he climbed out numb and panting on the other side, wouldn't he be able to take up life again as if he had just been born? How strong he would be if he could begin a life a second time. How madly, how joyously he would live now that there was no more war. He had reached the door of the hospital. Furious shudders of disgust went through him. He was standing dumbly, humble, while a sergeant bawled him out for being late. So you see, his imagination is the only way in which he could escape. Andrews stared for a long while at the line of shields that supported the dark ceiling beams on the wall opposite his cot. The emblems had been erased, and the gray stone figures that crowded under the shields, the satyr with his shaggy goat's legs, the townsman with his queer hat, the warrior with the sword between his legs, had been clipped and scratched long ago, in other words. Remember that he's looking at the ceiling of the hospital, which had been a palace or a castle, yes? We go back to the beginning of the section. In the strong afternoon light, they were so dilapidated, he could hardly make them out. He wondered how they had seemed so vivid to him when he had lain in his cot. At the beginning, when he went to the hospital at the very beginning, he saw these ceilings with all the sculptures, and he saw them in a different way. Now he realized that these things were, deteriorated, but when he saw them for the first time, they looked beautiful. Yes.
Mhm.
So this is the effect of having been in hospital for so long. He wondered how they had seemed so vivid to him when he had lain in his cot, comforted by their comradeship while his healing wounds itched and tingled. Because remember that he was suffering so much that he looked at these things and they gave him some comfort. Downstairs in the office, where the atmosphere was stuffy with the smell of varnish and dusty papers and cigarette smoke, he waited a long time, shifting his weight restlessly from one foot to the other. "What do you want?" said a red-haired sergeant, without looking up from the pile of papers on his desk. "Waiting for travel orders." "Aren't you the guy I told you to come back at 3? It is 3. Well, Ted," the man at the typewriter turned slowly round, showing a large face and blue eyes. "Well," he drawled, "go in and see if the loot has signed the papers yet." Well, they have again a disaster with the papers. And the man with the mustache beside the stove let the book slip from his knees to the floor and yawned too. "This goddamn armistice sure does take the ambition out of a fellow," he said. "Well, they are looking for his name and they cannot find him." And then finally he says, "Your name Jones?" "No." "Snivisky?" "No." "Andrews, John." "Why the hell couldn't you say so?" Poor Andrews. The man with the mustaches beside the stove got to his feet suddenly. An alert, smiling expression came over his face. "Good afternoon, Captain Higginsworth," he said cheerfully. Going to another swell party, Captain," the captain grinned. "Say, have you boys got any Red Cross cigarettes? I ain't only got cigars, and you can't hand a cigar to a lady, can you?" So you see, the officers are talking about going to a party, about smoking, and they ignore Andrews. The same that happened to him, remember, when he was enlisted at the very beginning, that he was naked in the middle of a room.
Yes.
So finally, Andrew said timidly, "Did you find the travel order? I'm supposed to take the train at 4:02. "Can't make it. Did you say your name was Anderson?" "Andrews, John Andrews." "Here it is. Why didn't you come earlier?" So he was there all the time, and well, so now he's going to the train station to go back to his outfit, to his group. The sharp air of the ruddy winter evening, sparkling in John Andrews' nostrils, vastly refreshing after the stale odors of the hospital, gave him a sense of liberation. Walking with rapid steps through the gray streets of the town, where in windows lamps already glowed orange, he kept telling himself that another epoch was closed. It was with relief that he felt that he would never see the hospital again or any of the people in it. He thought of Crisfield. It was weeks and weeks since Crisfield had come to his mind at all. Now it was with a sudden clench of affection that the Indiana boy's face rose up before him. An oval, heavily tanned face with a little of childish roundness about it yet, with black eyebrows and long black eyelashes. But he did not even know if Crisfield were still alive. Furious joy took possession of him. He, John Andrews, was alive. What did it matter if everyone he knew died? There were jollier companions than ever he had known to be found in the world, cleverer people to talk to, more vigorous people to learn from. The cold air circulated through his nose and lungs. His arms felt strong and supple. He could feel the muscles of his legs stretch and contract as he walked, while his feet beat jauntily on the irregular cobblestones of the street. The waiting room at the station was cold and stuffy, full of a smell of breathed air and unclean uniforms. French soldiers wrapped in their long blue coats slept on the benches or stood about in groups, eating bread and drinking from their canteens. Well, we are now at the station, at the train station, and well, we will start with the station next time, because here a new adventure begins. I don't know if you could read longer than this, Teresa.
No, I couldn't.
Okay, Teresa, yes.
Up to here, I read up to here, Ines.
Okay. So, as he said,
It is almost finishing the call.
that's why I said this. This is the end of an epoch, as he said, yes, his time in hospital. And now in the station, in the train station, a new let's say, situation will appear, and a new part of his life as a soldier will start.